I'm back coming with some more content, and then I feel pretty motivated with this one. I had some insight that, strangely enough, as I'm finishing my morning work and making my way back, a lot of times I start getting like ideas where I hadn't been I hadn't even been planning to like make a like content at that moment, but I start getting these ideas, and I start feeling like it might be something that I can run with, that might be of value. So I wanted to just start with that, and then also as with that, put a little bit of a just put a little bit of awareness at the beginning of this video that this content and all my content, I'm not speaking as an authoritative a figure, or taking an authoritative stance on anything. But it's still kind of useful. Like your tone, your tone is a big part of what you communicate, like in speech and in writing, and some of that is to present as though you have some background, or you're versed to a degree on what you're conveying. So I kind of like talk like that a little bit. It helps me like form my ideas and get ideas off. But the only authority that I would speak with anything on any subject is just being able to feel and mean what I say. Because I think you can't really mean what you say unless there's like some experience or like genuine insight that goes with that. But then also to be with that, to if we're really gonna be like mature, as equally as we mean something that we say, to be able to appreciate a response and then engage with the response with the awareness that all of us have blind spots. And so there's a limitation to any of our knowledge, awareness, and even experience, just simply based off of the way that we perceive and engage with reality from a center of a consciousness or feeling. Is that there's advantages and perspective with any vantage point or center of agency and feeling, in the ability to make choices and feel things. At any grade of being, there's always strengths of that perspective, but there's also limitations, and it's just simply how I think the universe, it kind of checks itself. So we're all checked to a different degree, and I don't want to step beyond that with that. So I offered this content with respect and in that light. But I wanted to also talk a little bit about authority with that, because that does factor into what I wanted to come with today, and then also talk about a little bit about just. A little more context is that I recognize that it's not to anyone's strong suit just to enunciate constantly and like always to always verbalize things. However, there is a unique value in something being articulated and verbalized at a salient moment, at a consequential moment, that can be whether like bantering and socializing, but then also like when things get like a little bit more, when real life is going on. If you can have someone who can speak intelligently and with compassion, with maybe with courage, compassion, and perspective about something that impacts you, that can be one of the most enlightening and redeeming experiences. When I was a young person, I went through like a lot of turbulence, like low key, that I think that a lot of like maybe someone in a position to benefit me may not actually appreciate like what I had actually been experiencing as a young person. But there were seldom times where somebody actually spoke up to me or spoke about my situation like intelligently and with confidence, and it really kind of like speaking life to my situation. There was one person, a person that I was around when I was becoming an adult, and I remember one time he said my name. We were kind of like in that other video where I was talking about like when people say we, and they use that as leverage, but like having fun, like, so yeah, it's me, A, B, and C, and it's gonna be D2, and we're about to be up there in like 10 minutes. And I was using that example of how like peer pressure when we say we like that. But I was once with my friend, and he was talking, he was like he was talking about me like to someone who wasn't present, but he said my name with respect on it. Like that's the first time I'd made it to be just about an adult. and I had never once heard my name pronounced with respect. I felt that when he said it, and then not too long later, another friend of mine was had been a friend of mine, like a lady friend no less, had been near around him when I wasn't there, and she said that she heard my name come up and again with him, and it actually be pronounced fluently with respect. And she said that she was really moved to hear what my name actually sounded like being pronounced with respect on it, because my name has just been it, one feature of the place where I live in it, that is that there's a challenge embracing. There's something called xenophobia, which is like an aversion to other cultures or influences, and it's a detriment to people coming into this place, but it's also a detriment for people here, because a lot of the cultures that are here have been they don't a lot of culture is lost, both cultures coming in and then cultures that have been here over generations, just simply because there's a lack of respect for anything that's different. So I really felt the brunt of that most of my life, bearing the name that I have, and it's still difficult anytime I meet or encounter someone and my name comes up. I have to either introduce myself for the first time meeting a person with a nickname, a moniker, or a diminutive, which is like an endearing way of saying your name. But I just can't just say my name without like going into like a backstory about it. And I didn't even want to make this video about it, but just to say that I actually went the one or two times in my life where I actually heard someone say my name with respect, pronounce it even stronger than I may be able to myself, because I grew up outside of the region that my name emanates from, and I had not actually heard it pronounced either fluently or with respect from my family members who might be able to pronounce it fluently with real sincere respect on it. But I experienced that one or two times. But I also, in a broader sense, this person that pronounced my name with respect, I also heard him say things. I heard him perceive things about other people and then enunciate a different truth in a really convincing way. But he also did get flack at different times for talking a lot. But what I meant to say is that I don't think you can get to be eloquent or convincing, whether socially or in real life matters, without exercising and cultivating the skill of communicating, with content creation being a form of that. I've referenced King Noble at different times, and he was talking in one video about how like a lot of times we'll see different prominent people in celebrity in media come under scrutiny, and then he's saying that like some people that come under scrutiny, whether celebrities or even maybe regular ordinary people, when they find themselves coming under different serious scrutiny, they had maybe engaged with like the status quo and the different spoils of modern society. But then when it comes to a head like that, then they start to reflect upon like what are some of the deeper themes running under our experience, and like what is propriety and what is equity at that point. But what this King Noble was saying, that perhaps like while we're ahead, while we're winning, maybe we should put aside resources, if not, and I'm not advocating for resources in this video, but I'm just saying simple support and esteem and respect for people who are cultivating different forms of maybe like scholarship or developing original thought, and then developing the ability to enunciate that where it counts, like maybe through literacy or just simple verbal content, word of mouth, where I think that some of the greatest thinkers, like even Osho, would say that the stronger would be the word of mouth, is that our real transmissions are more alive and vital via word of mouth, primarily in superseding written form, because written form is somewhat limited and is somewhat stifled in that it's not alive and vital, or it's almost like too perfect, where the perfection can be a little bit of another detriment and even violence in the perfection of something written. And I said in another video that sometimes things that are written are somewhat contrived, because there's a lot of editing behind the scenes, that as true as something may be in written text, as you would perceive that in text, it didn't come across like that. It had been thought about, reasoned, fashioned, but it was more or less organized and then even contrived, maybe in a enlightening way, but still contrived as it's presented, written. But when it's being verbalized, it's alive and vital, and you can actually appreciate the spontaneity of what's being communicated, and then the nuance and how that's coming across, which is also another form of the message. I made a post on there was a there's another YouTuber. I don't want to just be up here name dropping people, but if you were to, there's another influential person called Tariq Nasheed, and he's addressed different egregious statements and actions of different people in media up to very recently, and some of how that pertains to issues of like what's called FBA, or Foundational Black American. But you'll notice when you listen to him talk about some of these egregious things, sometimes his name having been cited, the pace and the cadence of what he's communicating as he's addressing these. I put another video that it reminds me of like some players like sitting around a card table or a dominoes table, and then like some kids are getting out of pocket, but they're kind of laughing about that, and then they're putting them in their place while they're laughing about that and while playing dominoes. And it's just that the intonation, the tone, the cadence, all of that really communicates quite a lot on there's like a subtext that is as great, if not way greater, than anything that's overtly stated. It's been said that more so of communication is nonverbal, even while verbalizing. And so I would say that that's the same with oratory, for not to level a heavy word like that, but for the appropriate word for oratory is there's, you're communicating on a lot of levels. But what I'm saying in this video, and what that person King Noble was saying, is that perhaps we should lean into supporting people who are cultivating these different skills of communication, but not outside of scholarship and wisdom that is sourced and backed, so that when people do come under scrutiny, there can perhaps be someone who can speak on their behalf. Now we're getting to the point where the court of public opinion is even way more informed, resourceful, and deadly than any official court. And I'm not trying to give any flowers to the court system, but I'm just saying that the court of public opinion is as vital as any other court. And in such a situation, to have people who can enunciate and speak truth to power, for lack of a better word, on behalf of people who may be being brutalized by public opinion and scrutiny, or at least if they have been wrong, at least someone who can speak to them and maybe atone for or incite a level of compassion and inequity in how they have to face and handle what mistakes they've made. So in that greater sense, I'm more so working on this channel again, like for the purpose of self-expression. But sometimes I think we don't have more like oratory, both in like in a compassionate big way, like just simply like speaking about experience, like some of these videos, but then also like different singers and stuff like that. Is that I think we would have way more singers and people with oratory if we didn't have such a culture of shut the fuck up in modern times. That's a lot of what I get and have always got when it comes to expressing ourselves. More people of all different backgrounds, all different ranges, in whatsoever way they will communicate that you may be better off just not saying anything. And I think that's what stifles us, and that's why that skill set is not developed it is so exceptional when it is developed. However, even at the times when it's developed, sometimes it's yet fettered by how it's been developed, because you can imagine like where is a venue where you can maybe appreciably gain skill, the opportunity to practice, but then yet become skilled in oratory. A lot of times that might have been like a faith setting or educational setting, but even these settings have internal challenges that can compromise oratory, or at least put leverage on oratory where it's not in its actual in its strongest potence because of some of the other factors. But actually, strangely enough, YouTube might be a strange venue where some of that has actually been transpiring. Where I recognize I was involved like in the Black church in the area where I am in the early 2000s, and then it's been it's been cited by other scholars that and I'm gonna have to mention the scholar just because of the how profound this insight is. But the scholar Umar Johnson, Dr. Umar Johnson, there's some controversy about his work, but I think what I have gathered in being exposed to him is that in different times, like the black church in the United States has been and is awesome, and it has gotten us through the worst of times and given us the best of beauties. One could say that our very liberty and rights as minorities, or even people who are not minorities, like such as like suffrage with women, or even just all people have benefited from the black church, I believe, and not the least of which being civil rights, and how that hit that heritage and lineage affected that point in history. But what Dr. Umar Johnson has said is that in at least, I don't know, I can't come with exact numbers and dates, but my understanding is that getting on towards like the later 90s, there had been financial initiatives that benefited but also may have muted aspects of the black church, not the least of which being nonprofit contributions that have that are affected by the government, and that has affected some of the voice of the black church, according to Dr. Umar Johnson. But all I meant to say is that I was engaging with and benefiting from the black church around that time, but like the late 90s and early 2000s, and I had my life changed by that. And I also experienced beautiful oratory and worship in that setting. But because of some of the challenges in that setting, like maybe some of my own lack of tact or just goofiness, I managed to alienate myself in there. And yet I've existed around existing around YouTube for maybe 10, 15 years, and experiencing a lot of the benefit that had existed in the black church, like not the least of which like Bible study on Wednesday nights, different inspirational messages and different insight that really speaks to what we're experiencing, like that from the ground level, from the real people right next to you that are going through life, but they have hard-won wisdom. That's the greatest value that I experienced in the black church, even as a teenager and young adult, is simply the experience and the esteem of people like me having similar experiences who can shelter me from some of my own incompetence. And I've got a lot of that on YouTube, so I wanted to just point that out. And I was almost going back to other videos I've talked about the reciprocity within like music, going back, where a lot of like what has got us through, I would say, all phases of challenges in the environment of human experience to the current day is that reciprocity between human beings. Not the least of which music, not the least of which oratory, not the least of which testimony, not the least of which insight. And a lot of that has to do with oratory, whether musical or prosaic. Prosaic is like just simple speech about literal subjects. But so I just meant to say, so I'm basically saying all this in a salute to all backgrounds of faith and all approaches. But I'm just saying that a lot of the human, what it is to be human, and what has allowed us to survive, it has existed in different contexts as it has been allowed to exist. Like, for example, I talked about like music, like folk music, like in the work fields of the slaves, and then in Africa before that, and then according to this book, Religion of the Slaves. And what they explain there is that the reciprocity and the sharing of experience has been the real core and essence of a black music and black oratory, and that it hasn't and isn't always necessarily what we would consider outstanding and righteous in a religious context, but because of the dynamics of the caste system, then sometimes it was forced to become more and more uplifting and focusing on what we would call like sublime or religious and righteous. Part of that, it was the conditions that's all they were allowed to communicate. That's all that their captors, who would be called masters, would allow them to engage with. So the message was still as dynamic as it has always been, and still pertain to all the different dimensions of life, because life is both light and dark. And it would be hard to think about about making like a family and like a future while being like completely like prudent and like so all I meant to say is that we're human, and being human and dynamic is the real thing, and then sometimes we have to make that appear more and more light. But there's also people, I would say, maybe currently, who make things like more and more dark. We're like doing different forms of like what would be called like hip hop and so forth, and they might be like talking about like what's cool and what's going on, but then they'll slip a real message in there, and so that's as brilliant as doing it the other way, where you're making things like about like heaven, but you're actually communicating something about like how we're gonna get along on earth. Um, but so I wanted to say that that it's more so about the reciprocity and the insight into to what we need to survive as being the core of real like music, art, and then oratory on top of that, and then different like religious or even like street things that surround us. Sometimes we may have to like pay homage to that more or less, but like it's really about survival, I think. But all I meant to say is that so a lot of times when we go to express ourselves, we're encouraged to be muted, and that can like stifle the development of the skill, but also like the impetus and the libido. I think libido and mojo means the same thing, but like your real like confidence and like feeling like you have something worthwhile to say, it can get stifled in almost any setting, whether like a street setting, a religious setting, an educational setting, a work setting, a personal setting, even a digital setting like YouTube. You can start getting different encouragement to shut the hell up. So and I want to be tactful, because a lot of heavy stuff can come behind that, and but also to work on developing the skill. But what I want to talk about today, and this is a completely different topic, is that I was talking about pernicious things, and I'm just also kind of running with inspiration on these. But I was talking about pernicious things, and I was also talking about gentrification. But I think that what is even more, if there was something more pernicious than gentrification, as the essence of gentrification, unifying all the different brutal phases we've been through, from what's been called capitalism and its Pyrrhic victory, and then to industrialism, feudalism, colonialism, adventurism. I would say maybe adventurism is a recent one that we haven't been calling out, but there has been a lot of adventurism, like such as the things that go on overseas in the Middle East, and that's another feature of gentrification and the colonial capital, industrial, all these different brutal human trends. Adventurism is also one of them, and that affects home and abroad, because a lot of people are like putting on like maybe affects of being tough, and then like inciting a different conflict that's unnecessary broadly in what's called adventurism, but also on a local level. So we suffer a lot of heinous violence and atrocities on a small scale locally. And I would say that some of that is actually a feature of adventurism also, which is inciting challenge and conflict for its own sake, outside of propriety or purpose, to fashion maybe like machoism, or like to arbitrarily concoct experiences that would make a person tough or anything else. That could be maybe a form of adventurism, both local and abroad. And there's also powerful interests that bolster that and that encourage that. Maybe we could even say some of the just the general crazy business that we see like on social media that garners our attention, but it also has to do with like really like violent or just crazy stuff that's happening in real life. But when it's like for its own sake and it's also part of profit, that could almost be like a more sophisticated form of adventurism that's taking place both locally and abroad. So I wanted to point that out. But what I wanted to say is that what is the real, what if there is something colder than all that, even as cold and colder than gentrification, and is the unifying essence of gentrification? I would say it's like a bullet with two sides on it, and that would be entitlement, or which would be entitlement in itself. But then the more refined feature of entitlement would be the bearing of titles. Maybe status could be a more sophisticated and loose form of that, different forms of status, but titles in themselves. As so, you have like status, then you have recognized titles, then you have entitlement as being like the different tiers of a monster, each deadly, but going a little bit more broader and more kind of like just going from going like to a demon to a devil is like that like that. But then the other side of that, and the essence, the unification of all those devils of status, titles, and entitlement would be and those status, and title, and entitlement really amount to advantage, and that's the essence of capitalism. So we can maybe say that capitalism is actually just status, titles, and entitlement, and what comes behind that. But then on the other side would be paternalism. That's the detriment. That's the cold stuff. Is it paternalism? That's the problem. The problem is paternalism. So I'm gonna try one, and like I'm just gonna give you like my so. I think so. The order Osho points out that it's been appreciated so we have like the pop psychology that's in your face and that everyone's familiar with, and that everyone marginalizes, stigmatizes, and condemns their very loved ones and people that they know from their armchair. That's like the pop psychology that's more broadly understood. But then there are actually some insights within what's called psychology that is as bad of a taste as I have in my mouth for that. For psychology, psychotherapy, psychiatry, all that stuff, there are some insights that are not completely false. But Osho, this who I'm getting ready to reference, also says that a half truth is more deadly than an outright lie, because a half truth is more convincing and therefore more manipulative and therefore more powerful than even a blatant lie. So I want to also caveat that. But what he says is what's understood on a little bit higher grade of these different fields or disciplines is that the main problems that human beings are encountering when they actually get to the point of being condemned, marginalized, labelized, or just having real difficulty being themselves can be reduced to the dynamics of the nuclear family. That's what's been recognized. And then and so and so he didn't, but when he said that and he referenced that, I actually didn't. That's another one of sometimes these insights that people don't actually all the way get completely off before they pass away. So I think he could have went deeper into that. But what I gather from that is that the essence of the challenge in the nuclear family is simple paternalism. That's what the real challenge of a nuclear family is its paternalism. But what I want to say is that this paternalism is part of the whole lineage of all this nightmare, but it can be appreciated fundamentally and exemplified in feudalism, which I think that feudalism can be argued to still exist in all of its. We talk about capitalism, industrialism, but at the certain end of the day, it's still yet feudalism within that. The way that entitlement works, and the way that that advantage is hoarded and mitigated, it's still yet feudalism in that sense. So what I wanted, so I'm gonna give an example of what I think is like an example of paternalism, but then also how that affects so that I can speak a little bit from experience, because I take care of young people who are yet considered minors, and that paternalism has a bearing on their experience of life, but then also their development and some of their outcomes as adults who may yet be paternal within their own lives and in their future families. So I want to say that respectfully, because these are very subtle and nuanced things that have a lot of scope and consequence. So I want to be respectful with this. But then another one is And so within feudalism, you have paternalism. So when I'm your landlord, when I'm the lord of the land, when I'm the baron, when I'm the this, the that, you feel like I'm mom and dad when I'm like that. Or if you're like that, I'm gonna feel like you're mom and dad, even though you don't look anything like me, and I'm glad you don't look anything like me. I'm gonna feel on a level like you're my parent. That's because you're exerting leverage, and that's being expressed as paternalism. My judgment is what's best for you. I know better what's best for you and me, and it's about to be what I say. That's paternalism right there. And so that can be problematic at any stage of a human's development. And I don't think any of us enjoyed that at any point of our life, including when we were young. But it's not. Like I said, like a half truth can be more deadly. So it's not out of reason that a person who actually is your close cognate, or that you're drawing support from, or that you're related to, or that is in your life, that they may not have insight into what may be to your health and your happiness. So that's why it's so sophisticated, and it can't be completely dispensed with and called bogus, because some people actually do have insight into our advantage. As human beings, they say, I'm my brother's keeper, but it's also the same thing for people who are our children, or are in our community, is that we actually are one another's keepers, and we do have a bearing on how well we're able to mitigate and manage our environment and survive. So that is some the most beautiful things can also be the most painful things. So this universe is unified, and that's why the author Arthur Avalon says there's no such thing as absolute freedom or absolute bondage at all centers of agency and feeling, of decision making and feeling in the universe. There's a scope in the degree of both freedom and fettering. And so as you are more and more, as you do things more and more proper and in good faith, in good reason, good measure, you gradually experience a higher degree of autonomy and ability to make decisions, and enjoy the consequence of those decisions. Generally speaking, the more dishonest you are, the more that you're acting in bad faith or not in propriety, the more you begin to fetter yourself and bond and become bonded. And it doesn't really matter how much wealth you do or don't have. As you are more proprietous, you have more agency on a level, and as you are more incongruent or dishonest, you will have less agency, according to Arthur Avalon. But we do actually have a bearing on each other's survival, and that's the most beautiful thing, but that's also the most daunting thing. So when people are taking paternal attitudes and statements with you, it's really painful, and it's really bogus on a lot of levels. But it's not completely. It's not that they don't have any insight or perspective that may be beyond you that could affect you. So that's why it's difficult to transcend it. But it is really challenging and problematic. And one could say that a lot of our pain in life, the majority of our pain in life, like me, for example, I'm misunderstood by most people, if not all people. I'm misunderstood, despite my efforts at scholarship, loving other people, caring for other people, and having goodwill towards people. When I waking up in the morning, not meaning anything against anyone, but yet experiencing a lot of alienation, ostracism, antagonism, marginalization, all that good stuff. I experienced a lot of that, and one could say that some of that has to do with. So I was more like outgoing when I was a very young child. I was markedly like outgoing, and not entirely. I could be considered, with perspective, what's called an ambivert, because I was very extroverted, to the point of like even looking silly like around my family. Like I'd be saying like, "Oh, grandma, look what I did, and then I did this, and then I did this." But then every once in a while, I would say something really cold, where they'd be like, they wouldn't appreciate that a child had actually said that, because I was like, "Mom, grandma, I did this, and then I ate my broccoli, and then is God real?" I would say stuff like that when I was a kid. But it was like I was very like I could be very extroverted, to the point of looking like silly, or like naive. But then I could say something that would be like really cold, where I had been actually seeing exactly who and what these people are, as I was being friendly, because that was my nature. But I could still yet see who I was talking to, and that was as a child, and that's still to this day on a lot of levels. But then I also had experience with being alone, and being comfortable and being effective alone when I was a child, such as being a thief, a self-styled thief as a child. a self-styled entrepreneur as a child, like putting together car washes and stuff to ring. I had older children engaging with car washes that I had initiated, and then getting money from different people in the neighborhood because I recognized that they may engage with me because I appeared cute or naive. And then when it came time to count the money, it was a lot of drama. You can imagine that with kids, but but then and then also like with sports, like playing alone and like playing like hours on end, practicing seriously, trying to get better without anyone, without any support, with my dad being not even knowing what I was up to. But having initiative, being alone with that, and being comfortable, and then doing so also when I'm an adult with a lot of independent delivery work, and having a lot of time on my hands on the road at all times of day and night, and being comfortable doing so more or less. But so that would be like an example of being ambivert. But what I want to say is that however that happened, as I am with that, it was who was as a child, and like a lot of people enjoy that about me. Even people that were markedly older than me, they took an interest and they appreciated some of that when I was young. And then as I got towards the later part of high school, and I had experienced the brunt of paternalism within my own family and also in the school system, and how that affects a person's confidence, understanding of themselves, and way of being with themselves around others, it became very challenging towards the end of high school. And that's part of how I engaged with substance, was to mitigate, account for it, and transcend that in my own way, which I was largely not successful at. But because of some of these graces, not the least of which the Black church, I was able to come out of that and gain experience from that. And then after a long process, get back to a point, almost as long as it took to be a child and to have a lot of things fucked up for me by different people. It took me that long to exist as an adult and get back to where I had been young. So there's a song called the great Nas said a song called like he's in his second childhood, stuff like that. But if people fuck up your childhood bad enough, you might actually need to have another go of it. So, but it's all good. But so now I'm getting to my later 30s and having a little bit of autonomy and independence, and getting back some of my original personality and way of being that is yet being appreciated by people also at different spectrums of development, as I'm being honest and congruent, and that's appreciable. And that's a blessing I count. But I'm yet still greatly misunderstood. And but the only reason I want to say that is that it had been a lot of paternalism that was what the problem was, and still is. And so that paternalism is a feature of feudalism in our society. So what I want to say is, I'm gonna try to wrap this up because I might get cut off. So we need one another, and we need constant figures in our life at all points of our life, as children and as adults. We need that. So children, they need constant figures that have their best interests, not the least of which community members, both that look like them and don't look like them, that are from similar experiences, and they need that support to grow and be healthy. But with that, I think that's always been our experience in nature, is that we've been communal, and we've had family, and we've had a bearing on the development of one another, not the least of which the up and coming generations. But feudalism is a little bit different, because feudalism is strictly about business, it's about inheritance, stuff like that. So I think that like coming from Africa, like different times my father has talked about like how they look at family and stuff like that, and like who's kin to you and what that means, and they actually appreciate kinship way deeper, more profound, and subtler than we would in Western society. Like the way that they view, for example, like in where I come from, your maternal uncles are very important. The brothers of your actual mother, they have a relationship and effect and influence on you that's profound, and is recognized by some African societies. I talked about the influence of like between two men who are friends, who are sincere, who have respect for one another, having influence on children that might be around that. But then on the other side of that is like what my father's talking about, is like your actual maternal cognate uncles. They have a significant bearing on you, and that's understood in where one of my father's cultures. And there's way more that they appreciate about family. But then I would still say the concept of brother, sister, father, uncle, second cousin twice removed, stuff like that. That's more about like feudalism, where you're actually having established lines of inheritance that are part of the actual the way that titles are functioning, and it's a function of entitlement. Our Western notion of the nuclear family is a function